And we are joined with Sebastian Xavier. What's up, dude?
Hey, hello everybody.
Coffee cheers if you're
Thanks,
drinking
thanks for
coffee.
having me. Thanks for having me. Well, I'm drinking water, but that will do. Hey,
Yeah, whatever
yeah,
works.
it's good. It's good. It's good to be on the show. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, dude, of course. I like that jacket, and dude, it reminds me of
Thank you.
something that I was way too invested in last night.
Okay.
Do you keep up with do you
Okay.
keep do you keep up with Tekashi 6ix9ine at all? Like, do you even know about
Not
him?
really. I know a
Oh,
little bit of him and how he like snitched and stuff, but
oh
I don't
no.
really know too much about him. I don't know too much about him. Why? Does
Oh,
he wear
because
something like this or something?
I mean, he wears all rainbow colors. Like, that's his thing, is like rainbow
Right.
hair, rainbow
Yeah.
clothing.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I knew
Well,
about that.
yeah, I
This
won't get
reminds
too.
you of 6ix9ine.
Well, it does because literally,
Fair play.
literally last night I stayed up late because he was going on Instagram Live at 11 p.m. and then he was going on live with Nicki
Right.
Minaj, who he dropped a song with, and I was just like there waiting. And what's funny is that like everyone's beefing with him, so he like airs everyone
Right.
out and like calls everyone snitches back and everything. And I was just like, oh, this is so good, but
Yeah,
I
man. I mean, I don't really go too deep into like those things, but I have heard, and yeah, I've got a few friends who are really into 6ix9ine as well. So fair enough.
do you keep up with like a lot of like I know you're in London, England, but like
Hmm.
is our like music culture like dominant where you are, or do you guys have like your own sort of thing that's like garage
Oh,
and UK stuff like that?
it's like a good mixture. It's like a good mixture because obviously, like with America and like the magnifying glass we have in America, it's pretty much like the epicenter of all Western culture in many regards. So no matter where you go,
Mm-hmm.
American music and American like pop culture will be relevant. So even here in London, yeah, 100%. Like that stuff still, we still listen to American hip hop. We still listen to American music. Um, Maybe not like people might not know like the beef or like the in-depth
Yeah,
stuff about
yeah.
like certain people, but it's still very much relevant, and like it'll probably be you ask the fourth person and they'll know everything about it. So like yeah, it's still very much part of culture here in
Oh,
London.
yeah, because I've noticed that a lot of your culture is starting to come over here now, like music wise. At least it's something that's really big. Like all of the like your rap styles. Like
Yep,
what's
grime.
yeah, grime and like drill and shit like that.
Mhm.
Like, dude, like
Mhm. Yep.
it's like popping up in like Drake's albums and it's popping up in
Mhm.
like different
Mhm.
influences. Dude, it's so sick,
Yep.
man.
Hey man, I mean, like, here's the thing. Obviously, as like a third culture kid, I mean, I only moved to London or the UK for university a couple years ago, and prior to that, I was in Hong Kong.
Oh, whoa.
But when I first moved to the UK and I first listened to like grime and drill, I was like, yo, I'm not sure if I'm into this. Like, I'm not, because like that was 2014 or so. So like a couple years back. Oh my god, that was 6 years ago. Holy crap, that's crazy to
Whoa.
think about. But yeah, that's crazy to think about. But when I first moved here, I was still very into like indie pop and kind of like alternative rock stuff. And a few of my flatmates at uni, they started like playing grime, and slowly but surely, I was like, "Yo, this is kind of sick."
Right?
Okay,
It's
because
kind of
like
hard.
yeah, because like the BPM and like the pace and everything's like so fast, and like with drill, because grime and drill are quite different as well. And with
Hmm.
drill specifically, it's quite. Lots of people say it's very violent and it's very rude, and I do get that because it
Yeah.
is. But at the same time, like it just sounds sick because like
It's
the whole
tough.
song is just yeah, it's tough, and it's a very difficult thing to get into. But once you're in it, you love it. And it's still very much part of like the East London kind of like it's very much kind of synonymous with like lower class kind of like rising up against
Interesting.
totalitarianism and stuff. It's sick. It's a great story, and lots of people have things to say about it and how violent it is, but I think it's cool.
I mean, it sounds like American rap music. Like it started off very violent, gang related,
Exactly,
fuck the police and
exactly,
shit, and then it's
exactly,
evolved into like our number one music genre. So
exactly,
it's kind of weird how that
exactly.
worked out, right?
Exactly. It's more or less the same thing. It's more or less the same thing. And now like everyone, who doesn't listen to rap, who doesn't listen to hip hop and stuff, blah blah blah. So maybe in a couple years time, drill and grime will be, accepted as kind of like, hey, UK culture, let's
Those
go, let's
offbeat hats.
go.
But
Yeah,
dude, I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, like, with like people like Drake and stuff, he came over here and was part of like a group, or like an honorary member of a group called like Boys Better Know.
Oh, whoa.
And it's just, and like basically like, it kind of allowed lots of UK lingo and slang to be brought over there, like fam and like in it, and
Wait, fam came
what
from you
else?
guys?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm not sure if like the origins are London, but like fam is pretty much part of the everyday London lingo. It's just like, what you saying, fam? Hey, you good? You good?
Dude,
Hey, let's
I
go. Let's
love that.
go.
It's like that is one of my favorite shits. Like that's like all my YouTube videos. What's up, fam? Welcome back. It's like that's like
Boom. There we go. Hey.
man, we're getting put on by you guys, man. That's crazy. So when you moved from Hong Kong, I guess like 6 years ago from Hong Kong to London, was that like a crazy culture shock for you?
Not really, to be fair, because obviously Hong Kong used to be like a British colony for the longest time. So it allowed for Hong Kong to really open up in comparison to China. And it allowed like an influx of like expats and different cultures, different religions. So in many ways, Hong Kong accelerated to the extent where it became like the Asian London, or like the Asian New York.
I see what you're saying.
It was the epicenter of trade. It was the epicenter of culture. So from day one, and since both my parents were also educated in the UK as well, so from day one, I was kind of already exposed to Western culture a lot. Like I would grow up watching like Cartoon Network and
Oh, dude.
Nickelodeon. There was lots of American influence as well. Grew up watching all these cartoons, the classic ones like Ed, Ed and Eddie, Samurai Jack, blah
Ooh,
blah blah.
ooh.
Good stuff.
Some bangers right there. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, but the beautiful thing about growing up in Hong Kong is that if you flip the channel, you could be watching anime. You could be like, you could be watching like a kung fu movie or something. So it was an environment that allowed me to really, be able to appreciate almost every aspect of every culture from like the get-go. So when I moved over to London, it was pretty much the same thing, because like, there's such like a huge abundance of different peoples here. So when I moved over, I was like, oh look, it's like Western Hong Kong. Cool. So yeah, there wasn't really much of a culture shock.
Dude, that's so comforting. The fact that the same time I was watching Samurai Jack and Ed, Ed and Eddie, someone else on the other side of the world was watching the exact same thing.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I mean, those
Big
were my
up,
cartoons, man.
Yo, the man, Cartoon Network back in the day was unbeatable. I
It
remember like going to
was.
school and then coming home, and then there'll be, let's see, what were there? All right, there was Ed, Ed and Eddie,
Yes.
Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Samurai Jack. Oh, there was so many.
Did you
Wait,
catch?
Teen Titans, Justice League,
Ooh, yes. Did you catch the
Batman,
Toonami? Did you catch like the
the
Toonami after school
animated
with like
series,
Dragon Ball Z and shit?
Toonami. You got Toonami.
Oh my
Yeah, there was
god.
Dragon Ball Z and stuff as well. But then we also had like a separate. Actually, you guys have it over there as well. Animax. You guys have Animax, right?
No,
Do you have Animax? Is that a
no.
thing?
I never
Oh,
heard of
it's
that.
like a separate channel that was just for anime.
Oh, it's
Maybe
so
it
sick.
isn't a Hong Kong thing then. But yeah, there was Animax, and then there was another thing called Boomerang, which was like pretty sure it was like old reruns of
We
like
had that.
classic vintage cartoons. Like
We had
yeah,
that.
like Scooby Doo, like the OG like 60s of like Space Ghost, Johnny Quest. Man,
Oh
those are the
my god.
days.
Dude,
Those are
that's
the
it's so funny.
Undercats.
Actually, now that I think about it, Boomerang was probably that channel next to Animax. Like back in the day when you had like a dish receiver, it was like channel
Right.
496 that you're just like, we
Right.
don't get these freaking channels. Like what the hell? Like,
Right.
but dude, so you went to uh London for uni, you said, or university for us dumb
So
Americans.
I actually went to Canterbury for university, which is south of London, about 2 hours out from London, and
Uh-huh.
it's near the coast of the UK. And it's like a small little village. It's like, well, they say it's a city, but it's basically a little village. But it was now that was very different to Hong Kong. London is very similar to Hong Kong in terms of it being a city, but going to Canterbury, where it was mainly just small houses, there weren't any skyscrapers. It was like big fields and big open space. That was very different, but I really appreciated it because it was so different. and it allowed me to kind of relax. And because in Hong Kong and London, and I'm sure New York as well, and loads of places, the pace of living is just so fast. Like everyone's always like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Everyone's always on their way to do something. Whereas in Canterbury, it was very much like a, hey man, what do you want to do today? I don't know, man. Let's just chill about. Like, let's play some footy and like on the, on the field. Like, yeah, let's go.
Let's churn some really butter. Nice.
Exactly. Well, let's watch some paint dry. But yeah, so I was there in Canterbury for a few years, and then I moved to London.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like the time I went to Seattle, which is on the other coast of me here in America. People were so goddamn slow. Like it honestly pissed me off. Like they were so slow to like place their coffee order, to walk, to do everything. Like I left there being like, I'm never coming back to Portland or Seattle ever again. These people are just,
you guys are living in the slow lane. Yeah. 100%.
So did you study photography in college?
So I actually studied art and film. So photography kind of came like naturally and organically afterwards. Well, not afterwards, it was kind of like simultaneous, but maybe I should just go into how I started photography.
Sure.
So I was studying art and film because as a kid, I've always loved drawing, I've always loved sketching, and watching those cartoons that we were talking about and watching all those animes that we were talking about really influenced that. So since day one, I'd be drawing on napkins, I'd be writing my own stories, drawing my own comic books. And then slowly but surely YouTube came about, and I started doing little action shorts of like, basically it's me and my friends kind of like holding BB guns, and then I'll add in muzzle flares and explosions and like create short little vignettes of like, 12-year-old FBI agent, something like that.
Dude, that's so creative.
But yeah, I was very like a hyperactive kid. And so with that kind of background of like drawing and like, doing these little short videos, I kind of decided that I wanted to be a film director. And I wanted to make films. And I've always had a huge appreciation towards films because I feel like films have probably become our biggest influence in pop culture, like Tarantino, and think about how he's influenced, pop culture so much. So I went to uni in the UK because I wanted to leave Hong Kong, because Hong Kong wasn't really the best place to kind of develop in terms of artistic creativeness. More on that later.
Yeah, we'll get.
But so I went to the UK because I was already I had a British passport, so it was really easy for me to go. I didn't have to get a visa or anything.
Oh wow!
So I went there, and started getting into it. It was nice. Uni was nice. It was good for making friends, but in my honest opinion, I wasn't really learning too much because it was stuff that I already kind of knew / was doing on my own in terms of like the film stuff at least. So when I was studying there in my free time, I started. I have a huge obsession with tattoos. Basically, I've got loads. I've got loads. I'm like littered. So when I was at uni, I started like doing lots of tattoo designs, and started that as like a little side business of like, I'll design your tattoo if you pay me like, $10 or something.
That's good.
And then slowly but surely, one of my friends was like, yo, how sick would that look if you put that design on a t-shirt or like a jacket? Like people would buy that stuff. And I was like, all right, okay. So in the summer of first year of uni, I sat down with this friend and we put together a business plan, put together some money, and we started a clothing brand together. And basically it was all kind of like tattoo inspired art. It was very streetwear. And we started selling it. And it actually went pretty well, where whilst I was at uni, it was a very nice bit of income. And I was able to pay off all my debts, blah, blah, blah. I was legit like in the green.
That's really good. That's really good.
So like the first few collections actually kind of not blew up, but it did really well, especially here in London. But then like through that clothing brand, obviously we need to take photos for the website. We need to take photos for the catalogs, et cetera, et cetera. So at first I was like, okay, I'll just hire someone to do it and then blah, blah, blah. But then obviously that was more money. And as a uni student trying to do our own startup business, it was very tough, obviously. So we had to try and save as much money as we can. So one Christmas, I decided, you know what, I'm going to get myself a camera and I'm just going to take all the photos from here on. And then I started taking photos, and then I was like, yo, this is pretty dope. Like, I'm having lots of fun taking photos. And after a couple years, so I graduated at this point, and the clothing brand was still all right. But at that point, I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to move on from the clothing brand, and I'm going to focus on photography, because I feel like I can tell my stories better through photography. So we ended the clothing brand, and I shifted to being a full-time photographer, and that's pretty much it. That's how, that's the whole journey.
So even though the clothing brand was successful at making good ass money to pay off your school debt, you still started from scratch from photography to like start that?
Pretty much. I mean, mind you, we had a very good start for the brand, and then slowly it kind of died down a little bit towards the end. But I would say that's also due to the fact that me and my friend were slowly kind of growing out of it as well, and we're slowly kind of losing interest. So at that point, we both said like, okay, we've had a good run, and we've actually been able to make a nice bit of profit from this, but I feel like our minds are on to different things, because my friend then went on to pursue music, and I went on to pursue photography, and we just haven't looked back since.
So interesting that you went photography over film, because that childhood passion was like being a filmmaker.
True,
like it's like you went for a single frame instead of multiple frames. It's kind of like an interesting little thing.
I would say the main reason behind that is because film is a lot more expensive. Because so with stills, all you basically need is that camera, and you're kind of set, right? But with obviously there's lots of other things that come into it. But with video, there's a lot more planning involved, in terms of like, first you need to make sure the lighting is good, so you need to get lights. You need to book out a location. If the location isn't good enough, you need to make sure the cast is all free on that same day for filming. Slowly but surely, it just kind of like film just proved to be quite expensive to do in comparison to photography, so I decided to pursue photography more.
I mean, to be completely honest, that kind of sounds very similar to photography, what you just said.
True. That's true. That's true.
That sounds very similar.
That is a very good point.
Because I've seen some photos of yours that have multiple people in it, and it's the exact same dynamic.
That is a very good point. That's a very good point. But the main point I was trying to make was like, I think film, like having a good film camera / equipment, I think the equipment side is more expensive than photography side.
Oh yeah.
Because with photography, all you really need is like a strobe light or like an in-camera flash, etc., etc. And that one camera, you're basically set. Whereas with film, you're gonna need audio equipment. You're gonna need different kinds of light. You need a constant light. You might need like a spotlight. You might need, all sorts of stuff. You need ND filters, different lenses. You might need like a external monitor, hard drives, blah, blah, blah. It all kind of racks up. And then transportation of that equipment. Whoo! That's what I was trying to say. But I get your point as well.
Yeah, film is like a way more complex version of photography. Just like all this extra shit. The lenses are like 10 times the price for some odd reason. Like I have no idea why. Like who made that up?
It's so I don't know, man. I mean, here's the thing. Like,
they're cutting out a little bit.
This and he's the director.
Wait, hold up. You cut out. You cut out.
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Yeah, I think. All
right, we're good.
All right, we're good.
All right, so so we were having this conversation yesterday with me and my friend, and he's a director of photography, a cinematographer, and we were both saying like, hey man, I kind of want some new gear, like I want some new equipment, what should I get? It's like, I could get a new lens, or I could get 2 new cameras. I'm like, and it's so true. And you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, but it's just how it is. Because a lens can truly change everything.
For film, like a lens is that impactful? Like, is it that crazy in the film world?
I think for both photography and film, because at the end of the day, obviously, it's still, there's lots of crossover. And loads of still cameras now can also do amazing video. But obviously, if you're trying to go into that high end kind of tier, that's when the cameras start getting a bit more expensive. So you've got like Alexas, you've got Blackmagic, and you've got red cameras. All of those are like 70 grand or something like that. And then the lenses, of course, like because with each lens you can basically tell a different story from each lens. Because say you're shooting on a 35 millimeter, this is where it's going to get a little bit technical, lads.
No,
but say we're shooting on a 35 millimeter, basically, like when you're shooting, say something like a table with like a glass and like a few things here and there evenly placed. With a 35 millimeter lens, it kind of creates this like effect where everything is tilting up away from you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then if you change the lens to like a 50 millimeter, that kind of tilting up effect becomes straighter, and it'll become like, it'll become the perspective. So with lenses, you can almost create different effects. And then obviously with 60, the higher you go, like the different cameras, et cetera, with IMAX cameras, medium format, 65 millimeter. I would say the best example would be, have you seen the film Revenant with Leo, where he fights a bear?
Yeah.
In the wilderness.
Yes, I have seen that.
So what's so great about that film is that even when you're looking at a wide shot of like exteriors and stuff, it has this really 3D effect where like there's there's a lot of depth, even though it's a wide. So if you were shooting this on a normal, say 28 millimeter lens or a 24 millimeter lens or something, and it's like a lower end camera, it could legit just look like a flat image. And obviously you get, different planes of aspect and like focus and stuff. But with a 65 millimeter or like an IMAX, it creates this weird kind of like everything seems close but far. And
thinking of that movie. Thinking of that movie, it makes me think of the scenes where you would like pan over the forest and you felt like you could see deep into that forest. Like you could see
exactly.
Like you could see past the first row of trees as opposed to like
exactly.
Just
There we go. And it almost feels like you're there. So that's why, like, having the different lenses, having the equipment can make such a difference. And so I do get why like they're so expensive.
Dang, I feel like as a photographer, we should know more about these things. Like, I feel like I haven't properly heard anyone say that. Like, until you said, like, I haven't really like that whole 45 perspective and the 50 perspective. But I mean, I guess naturally,
it's
just. What are you saying?
No, I was just gonna say. I kind of forgot what I was gonna say now. Sorry, you keep going.
Yeah, no,
keep going.
Yeah, for people listening, sometimes it's tougher because there's like a packet loss because they're so far away, but it's all good. I mean, you kind of pick up with it after you've been doing photography long enough that different lenses have a different mood to them and like a different feeling to them. Like there's like the general rule of thumbs. I mean, I haven't heard about tilting or anything like that, or like which lenses make you feel more intimate and make you feel more there. But like generally it's like 35 fashion, 50 portraiture, 85 portraiture. But then it's like 100 millimeter is for like beauty and close-ups. But if you ever shot a portrait with 100 millimeter, it's kind of lit. Like I love that perspective. Like it's really nice. So you're kind of breaking the rules with your photography. Is there a certain lens that you gravitate to?
So I currently right now I'm using a 24-70 Sigma lens, and essentially the reason why I use a 24-70 is because it gives me that range where I can, like, if I want to get like a far shot, I can like, boom, or if I want to go a little closer, I can zoom in. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I don't really have like specific lenses that I gravitate towards. I pretty much have one workhorse and I just use it and I maximize it.
24-70 are my favorite lenses.
Boom, 100%. I've also used like the equivalent that was done by Sony with the G Master range, and exactly the same. Like I just wanted that like range of like I can zoom in if I want. If not, I can just pull back.
Well, I guess while we're talking the techie stuff, what kind of camera do you use?
So I use a Sony A7 II.
Oh, Sony shooter.
I've been a mirrorless shooter for pretty much years now, actually. So I started with a Nikon D7000 or something like that. I don't actually remember, because it was who was it? I think it was either like a course mate at uni or someone that I knew. Anywho, it was a camera they had, so I used it. And it was great. It was amazing. But at that time, I didn't really know the nitty grittiness of, like, what makes a good camera and what doesn't make what makes a bad camera or anything like that. And I was kind of shooting on like automatic mode, blah blah blah. I didn't really know what
Hey,
everything
we've
meant.
all been there. We've all been there.
Exactly. We all do that. We all do that. And then slowly but surely, obviously I had to give the camera back to my friend. So I was like, all right, okay, what's a camera that I can get that's like, not too expensive, but also good enough? And at the time, the A7 II just came out, and it did a little bit of everything. It was really ergonomic, and in comparison to a DSLR, the mirrorless is just so lightweight.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
really liked
Yeah.
Exactly. I really like the idea of like me, going to uni. I could put it in my backpack, boom, go to a lecture, and then right after be like, all right, I'm going to London. I'm going to take a photo, right? And so that's why I started with a mirrorless with the Sony A7 II, and it's just basically been this ever since.
Dude, mirrorless, I'm
I've
so
used
jealous. Oh, they're so good, dude. Like that by itself, the fact you just throw it in your bag and take it out, like it feels like more fun. Like when I
right.
have like a Canon mirror or like a Canon DSLR with your 24/7 on it, it feels like a whole
Hmm.
goddamn unit. So it's like it
Right.
feels like intimidating sometimes, I feel like, to other people. Like you have this giant,
But it does feel good too, though. Like having that
like,
having that big one, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I've got a weapon, I've got a cannon.
yeah, I know,
Um,
but like I feel like if I was in the streets, like like having like a fun day with my friends,
true,
like taking
true.
photos, there's no way I would bring that and be like, "What's up, guys?" Like
Yeah,
the
true. Very
Sony
true.
is like still kind of sexy and small, and like it's kind of sick.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I have used like a few other cameras here and there. Because I was actually during my like startup stages, I was interning for other photographers or like working with other photographers. So I have had chances to use like Canons and um, have I used anything else? Yeah, mainly Canon 5D, blah blah blah. And it was great. I loved using that big machine as well, but I always gravitated towards the lighter weight one.
That's really interesting. So you kind of apprenticed when you first started.
I think it's a very crucial part in most young starting up photographers, is like having a mentor to kind of like teach you the ropes and kind of like show you how it's done can really help. It can really help, which is why right now I'm actually not mentoring, but I'm kind of like showing a few people around. Like I'll bring them onto shoots and stuff, and they would help me out, and I would try and explain as many things as I can, because I had that and that really helped me, so I wanted to do the exact same thing.
Did you mentor anyone? Could you mentor with, like, who was your mentor, if you don't mind me asking? I'm just kind of curious.
So he's a photographer called Harris Newcomb, and
Wow.
he's a pretty big photographer here in London. He's great, and he's a
Yeah,
good friend.
I know his work.
Boom. And yeah, so I was working for him for about 2-3 years or so, when almost immediately after I graduated from uni. And he took me under his wing, even though he had no obligation to, or no responsibility. He just decided to help me out, and he really taught me so much, so I'm very appreciative of that.
Oh, see, that connection makes sense, because when I started getting into London photographers, it was you and
Hmm.
Harris, and there's like some other people I forgot, but you two were like the main ones who had this like similar style. But it makes sense now, since you worked under him. I'm sure he taught you some like
Hmm.
different
Hmm.
techniques, or the way his
Hmm.
approach or his editing techniques and stuff like that.
Hmm. Hmm. So yeah, I mean, obviously the London scene is pretty expansive. Like, there's so many talented photographers out there right now. I would say one at the forefront is a girl called Hannah Zebzabi. I'm not sure if you may have come upon her work
Yeah,
before,
I
but
know her too.
Yeah, so she's a very good friend of mine, but I would say she's probably one of the most talented people in the London scene.
Whoa, big ups.
There's also a guy called, hey, big up, hey Hannah, shout out. There's also another photographer called the Tog Father, and he's sick. Like he's so good. It's like great name, right? Great name.
It kind of makes me cringe a little bit, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. But when you see his work, you'll be like, yo, okay, damn, dude. And that's the thing. I feel like the London scene is just so like, full of life and full of vibrance. And the thing is, in London, this scene is like really close knit, and it's very much like a little community where almost everyone knows everyone. Every photographer basically knows the other photographer. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And the thing is, it's not really a competition either. Everyone's really willing to help each other out and big each other up, which I think is great. And I think it's something really unique and special to the UK scene. Obviously, I don't know how it is over in America or the rest of the world, but at least here, even amongst like YouTubers and photographers and filmmakers, everyone here is willing to help the other, and I think that's really cool.
It's interesting you bring that up, because the few London photographers I follow, it's like you, Hannah, and Harris Newcomb, the people that I see the most. And I have noticed that you guys seem like kind of a clique, but also your styles are like, you have a lot of similarities, but they're all different at the same time. Like you all tend to do this sort of like orangey red skin.
Yeah, that's true.
What is that? What is that, Sebastian? I need to know, like, what is up with the orange red skin? Like, what is going on there? Am I missing something? Because it's beautiful to look at, but it just totally seems like it's like this unique style to you guys.
I mean, obviously I'm not going to speak for Harris or Hannah, but for me personally, I think, I don't know, man. I just feel like it looks cool. I think,
it does.
Like here's the thing. Like when we all started out, or when I started out, it took me a good while to really kind of find my style or what worked for me. And I think even now to this day, I'm still kind of developing it. I'm still trying to find it. And although lots of people say that, oh, I do have a style, I don't actually think I do yet. I think visually, I'm still kind of getting there. And I think the one thing that kind of, makes me stand out a little bit would be more so the narrative or like the concept rather than the look. Because the look is very much kind of like a mix match of things I've picked up over the years. Now, obviously, as I said, and as you said, Harris was a huge part of my life as well. So, there was lots of kind of stimulus from him. But Harris and I and Hannah, we all have very similar tastes in films and music and visual media as well. So I grew up reading comics and reading lots of manga and watching cartoons, as I said. And some of my favorite comics were, well, not comics, but art was Tank Girl by Jamie Hewlett. Like his work, like he worked with like gorillas and stuff, blah blah blah.
Yeah, it looks just like the gorilla stuff. Yeah, that's sick.
He's the guy that does the gorillas artwork.
Oh, whoa! What's his name again?
Jamie Hewlett.
Oh, so that's the genius behind all that sick gorillas art.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So him with Jamie Hewlett's style, it's very vibrant. Like he's got people with green skin, with pink skin, with red skin. And since day one, like looking at his work and seeing like a badass girl, actually, I can show you some of this. Yeah, I'm gonna find. There's this one frame that always stick to me, and has basically become like the biggest inspiration for my aesthetic in general. So this girl right here.
Can you describe it for people who are listening real quick?
Okay, so there's this girl right here, and basically she's kind of like, she's just like a punk girl. She's got a cigarette, she's got a bandage on her face, and she's kind of like lifting up her shirt, and she's got tape over her boobs, and she's got like tattoos, she's got like, scratches on her face. She just looks like she's been through a battle, but she looks fucking badass. And I don't know if I can swear. Can I swear?
Dude, we can say what the fuck we want, dude. I'm not worried about it.
Hey, okay,
let's go, baby. This is the Wild West.
Let's go. Oh, and then here's another one of like just a girl with like a Mickey Mouse hat, Mickey Mouse hat,
dude.
I totally
see
got, like,
that.
a cigarette, and like and that's the thing, like that aesthetic of like a badass girl who doesn't give a crap about what everyone thinks. That really influenced me a lot. As like my says internet connection was unstable for a sec, but yeah, sorry. But yeah, that aesthetic really influenced me growing up. And also watching lots of movies where there's like a badass female, kind of like Kill Bill, or I'm not sure if you're familiar with the works of Hayao Miyazaki. He did Studio Ghibli.
Oh, of course.
So Howl's Moving Castle.
Amazing movie.
Boom. So exactly. So Miyazaki has always proclaimed himself to be a feminist, and I fully agree, because in his films, he always has a really badass woman character. Like no matter who's the main character, there's always a sick woman there, kind of like, yeah, I could do whatever you do, but better.
Always like overcoming,
you know, growing, and like growing up in that environment of seeing all these badass women and having a mom and a sister who are fucking badass. Big up to them. You know, they kind of influenced me in my kind of narratives and like my visual style, where I wanted to show badass goddesses almost and have them look very, you know, cool and vibrant and just a little different from everyone else. So that really influenced my style a lot in terms of like who I shoot with and how I shoot.
I mean, 100%. When you show that up, it makes so much sense, because I have some of your photos on my desktop here that, of course, I could pull up in a second. But those punk rock, like badass girls, like empowerment. It's so obvious when you show that it's in your work. Like you use these kinds of like tough, edgy girls, and you don't how do I say, you don't make them look weak. Like you glorify their powerfulness, their femininity, like, and it's such a strong concept. Even the red backdrop. I've noticed you use a lot of red backdrops too.
I like using red a lot, just because, like, you know, it's universally kind of accepted throughout history and throughout art. Is like red is just the, you know, color of power, the color of passion, the color of blood. So I like using, you know, block primary colors as well. You know, having tattoos and like, you know, just having badass people has always been a theme. But recently, I would say I've kind of moved on from that a little bit, where now I'm trying to kind of portray, I'm still using the same subject matter and the same people, don't get me wrong. But I think my visual style has changed in a way where I'm trying to make them more into classical art goddesses, if that makes sense. So I said I grew up with all these cartoons and all these comics, but another huge part of my life was an appreciation towards art, classical art. So one of my biggest inspirations is actually going to museums, especially here in London, being the epicenter of culture in Europe. I go to the museums all the time. I go to the V&A. I go to National Portrait Gallery almost once a month, at least up until now during the pandemic. And I would look at the works of Caravaggio. I would look at the works of Vermeer, Gustav Klimt. You know, all these grand masters, and you know, seeing how they like compose their images and how they use lights really inspired me to start the series that I'm sure you may have seen about a year ago, called Between Harsh Reality and Utopian Beauty. And it's essentially using my like edgy kind of aesthetic and subject matter, and then putting them into a context of where I wanted each photo to kind of look like a painting, to kind of look like a, you know, classical piece of art.
Can I pull one up? Can I pull one up?
Yeah,
quick?
go for it.
Like
go
one that directly references. Yeah. Hold up, let me share 100%. This screen real quick.
Can I just go quickly grab some water? Is that okay?
Yeah. Actually, hold up. Before I share this, I'll pause real quick because I got to go pee, and then we'll talk about the photo. Okay.
Nice.
All right. There we go. Here, let me pull up something that directly references your like your museum experiences and stuff. Because dude, that's so sick that like living here in DC, I share a lot of the same feelings towards museums too. Is like back when I could go, I'd go at least like once a month, sometimes twice a month to the national. We have the National Portrait Gallery here too, in Chinatown, and that's my favorite spot because they have like the best rotating pieces, and I'll go there with like a notebook. I'll go there with a notebook, and like sometimes I'll get baked, sometimes I won't. Depends on like how I'm feeling. Because sometimes I'll get like baked and I'll go and I'll start to feel paranoid, and like I don't like that. It's weird in like federal property. But I'll just go and I'll sit and just be like studying stuff.
Whoa.
But yeah, I'm saying
exactly.
But dude, it's so nuts. Like to see these like it blows my mind to think that as a photographer, we take like one photo, we may edit it, and we do some stuff. It takes hours. Your photo's probably a lot different than my editing process, but these painters for one frame, they probably spend like a month, especially if it's like a 15-foot
at least
golden frame.
Exactly,
painting.
At least.
Like
like if you look at some of the pieces that say like, oh, it started in 1746, finished in 1753, and you're like, what? And you're like, this is 10 years or something, dude. Whoa! Imagine spending that much time on one photo.
Right, because it wasn't procrastinating. Like, they had nothing else to do. He wasn't watching YouTube. Like
exactly. He wasn't watching cartoons and shit.
Well, here, let me share this one with you. This is one that I think I'd love for you to speak on. But like this, I feel like is a direct reference to your museum experience. Like,
Yep. So, as some of you may know, this is a painting by Velázquez called Venus. Very self-explanatory, to be fair. It was okay. Actually, do you know what? I'll go a little bit into the actual painting itself. So that photo, that original painting by Velázquez, shows Venus in almost exactly the same pose as this photo, and she's looking into the mirror. And there's like a few angels holding up the mirror, and she just looks very sad. She's just looking into her own mirror, into her own reflection. And there's lots of, the common kind of consensus on that story was vanity and pride, and kind of like, or you could say it was about Venus's beauty and how, she was very content and she was very, glamorous, or not glamorous, but like, she was, often heralded as one of the most beautiful creatures of the world. So in this reinterpretation, you could say, which is titled The Vanity of Venus, or The Pride of Venus, I wanted to show that, again, similarly, this is, a very beautiful girl, or Venus, and all she does is spend time with herself. And you can see here, she's having a cigarette, she's chilling about, and her own reflection has come to life and is lighting her cigarette. And, she spends all this time in front of this reflection because all she does is spend time with this reflection. She's got grapes, she's got wine, she's got alcohol, she's got a candle. It's almost as if she's so enamored with her own image that she's forgotten the world exists around her. And all she needs is herself to sustain. Now, you could argue that this is kind of powerful. This could be like, a human being being content with themselves. But you could also argue that this is a very sad image. This is just someone who's so vain that they're very alone. And that's the thing with this series of work that I was just talking about. Utopian Beauty is basically meant to be using beautiful imagery to tell sad stories. That's my theme now. That's my narrative that I'm trying to do. I want people to look at the photo or the image or the piece and be like, oh, wow, that's really pretty. But the longer they look, the more they realize that it's actually a sad story. That's a sad narrative. And I think the best way of describing it would be, when you're really sad and you listen to a sad and you listen to a sad song and you're like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but I really like it. Like, being enamored and being enveloped with all that like angst and sadness. That's pretty much what I was trying to recreate, that kind of bittersweetness of like, it's beautifully sad.
I mean, that's a hard thing to pull off is beautifully sad, because with photography, if you just do sad work, it's like a fine art piece, but it's not something that you feel like people want to buy, which isn't a measure of if something's good. But I've learned from my experiences that if you present artwork that's directly sad, then people are like, but something like this, and if you're listening, it's a picture where this girl is laying, her back is facing away from you. It's like she's laying on her side. She's looking into like this small golden mirror, but in the mirror, and this is like the cool trippy part, is that it's her own self reaching through the mirror, lighting the real person's cigarette. And in the original piece, is she just looking at herself in the original piece, or is she just facing away in the original piece?
She's just looking at herself with like her head kind of resting on her hand, and you just see the exact same reflection. So my twist on this was adding the reflection interacting with herself, and obviously there wasn't a cigarette or wine or anything like that in the original painting. And the original painting was just a beautiful woman looking at her own reflection. I essentially just wanted to accentuate
that one twist.
Exactly. I just wanted to add that little twist.
And like that's the beauty of things, because like some people might be like, oh, you're copying, but I'm like, hell no. I'm like, this is inspiration, because a photo is different than a painting. Your interpretation will always be extremely different. And also something that's I've noticed is that you do use a lot of tatted models. This model is completely like pure looking. She has nothing on her skin.
Yep. I think with this series especially, I kind of wanted to not necessarily move away from only shooting with tattooed models, because I think that kind of became into like its own thing as well, where people were kind of saying like, oh, you only shoot with people that have tattoos, but that wasn't true. And essentially with this new series that I was doing, I wanted to kind of really have that kind of like classical art kind of vibe going on. I wanted that to be the theme, where like people could be like, I see what he's trying to do here, blah blah blah. So Caitlin, the model in this photo, she's a really good friend of mine, and she had that, you know, classical art kind of beauty about her. She had like the rosy cheeks, the beautiful lips, the beautiful curls, and so I thought she was perfect for it. And yeah,
I mean, I think that's tight. I wish I had more examples of that series up here, but that was like one I think directly contributes. But it's like those painters got it right. Like sometimes it's just simple, like a beautiful woman laying down like the suggested nudity, and like that's all you need. Like that's beautiful in itself.
I think the main thing that I usually get from looking at classical paintings and classical art is their use of light and their use of negative space and composition. That's the main thing that I always tell everyone should go and examine. Is so, for example, right now, even on my screen, I've got one single light that's kind of like at a 45-degree angle to my face, and that creates that one strong shadow on my face, except this little illumination of the cheek. That's the Rembrandt lighting.
Yep.
And you know, just like stuff like that creates such a different mood, and like, you know, it looks so different already if it was just like the light behind, or if it was just like facing me directly. Again, I mean, it looks so, okay, the camera's obviously not at the right, but yeah, even if it was like facing me directly, it looks so different already. So like lighting can really change the mood of a photo so much, which is why I always tell everyone to go to these museums and go on, or even if you don't have access to these museums, just look at classical art and see how they light. But yeah, like in terms of composition as well, in terms of the narrative, I think what's so beautiful about all these old pieces is the fact that there's such a story behind them. There's one example that I was.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but can we stick on the lighting part real quick, because I think that's really important.
Okay. Yeah.
Back in the classical times, they had candle lighting. I'm pretty sure they normally only lit with one light, or it was either like a candle light or a window light, and then that's why it was like such still photos, because if you're painting things, they didn't have photography. If you're painting things, what's an easy thing for them to do? Well, lay on your side and look in a mirror for an hour or two so I can get like the outline right. But something that I think is important with photography is that it's not taking photos, you're shaping light. Like you're essentially like your light is the most important part of your photo, which I think needs to be hammered in, and just why I want to stick on it, because it's not about like the composition is important, but at the end of the day, it's all about how you shape your light, and that is how you can tell whose like work is different, you know, because anyone can shoot a fashion shoot and blow it out and have a pure white, and then you can never tell whose it is. But depending on how you shape your light and manipulate it and place it, like that's the true test of someone who's like really good at what 100%. They do or bad at what they do. Because if you look at like 100%, if you look at beginning photographers, some of the earliest mistakes you do, and I've done these before, is you just blow it out. Like you just put like a flash on your camera and you just completely blow it out, and you're like, oh, it looks good. But you start to notice that when you put the light to a 45, like a Rembrandt degree, and there's like all different kinds of crazy techniques I forget about, but you notice like, oh, the way it comes across her back, like the way it falls across her face and creates that triangle.
Exactly.
And that is so important.
Small details like that can like elevate your image so much. And you're right. I feel like photographers and lots of filmmaking as well. At the end of the day, you are simply the manipulator of light. I think one of the best people to be doing this right now is a guy called Roger Deakins. I'm sure you might have heard of him.
Haven't, not that
so
one.
Roger Deakins, he's a director of photography for films, and he did films like Skyfall. He did films like Dunkirk. He did films like 1917. So obviously, in film, people always celebrate the director, but it's the director of photography, the cinematographer, that can really, really bring the film to life. So Roger Deakins, his films have a very natural look about them, and it's insane. And I think one of the best examples in terms of light is there's a scene in Skyfall, James Bond, where he's running on this icy lake, and behind him this mansion is on fire. And rather than obviously creating this, they did actually blow up the mansion, but rather than like having the mansion permanently being on flames whilst they did all those shots, they had like a massive grid of like, I don't know, giant tungsten lights. And they had that set up in like a formation where it was basically like a giant solar panel of lights.
Whoa.
And it was just illuminating, and it was all like from the back, it was backlit, and there was like lots of beautiful silhouettes, and it was all like basically set where the mansion was, and so that it would always be, you always have that spatial relationship of where everyone was, and like the way the light would hit was just beautiful. And Roger Deakins really, in my opinion, is the best cinematographer of all time. And I think anyone who's interested in going into film or photography should definitely check out his work.
I'm going to be completely honest. I fell in the category of giving all the props to the director too. I had no idea that the director of photography was actually in charge of all the lighting. To be completely honest, like I honestly, in my mind, whenever I saw director of photography in the credits, I just assumed he was like on set taking stills.
There is that common misconception. Yeah, not many people know what a director of photography actually does. And the thing is, the DP. So the director, obviously, he kind of has his vision. The DP is the guy who makes that vision into a reality. Now, the director, obviously, he would have like, here's an example. Zack Snyder. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, he is visually one of the best, but in terms of substance, he may not necessarily be a good director. As my friend always says, he's like, what if a 14-year-old boy had $1 million budget? His films would look like that. So they look great. They look like comic books and stuff. It looks sick, but then it doesn't really make sense in terms of like the story and the narrative.
Wait,
he focuses a lot on the moment.
What's a Zack Snyder film? Like, what's a obvious one?
Batman versus Superman, 300. Man of Steel.
Okay.
So he focuses a lot on the moment, on the visual candy. Now, Zack Snyder is a director that has a very clear vision, and you can see that. And he would obviously only work with one DP, or a DP that understands him. Now, the DP, he's someone who would basically be the guy that would be like, right, I know what you're seeing in your head. This is how we're going to have to do it. So we're going to put a light on this side. We're going to put lights there. We're going to have the camera shoot at this angle. But so he's the guy that makes all those decisions. So they're very, very important to the process. And when you have someone like Roger Deakins, that's someone who's got years of experience. And you could basically be a kid like Tim, Tom, and Bill from down the road. And you could come up with a concept, give it to Roger Deakins, and he'll probably make that film into an Oscar film. He'll be like, yeah, okay, cool. We'll make it look great. Like, DPs have that much power. Like, a good DP can make or break a film.
Oh, that's good to know. See, now you just completely shifted. Like, it's like the director is the is the guy, but the DP, yeah, he's the lighting, the mood, like this, everything looks okay. He brings it all together through the lighting.
I think the most important thing to have on the film is basically to have people that understand each other. Obviously, you want a director that has a good vision and a DP that knows the director well enough to be like, okay, I know what you mean, and they can come to a compromise and create something together. The minute someone bashes heads, then obviously it doesn't work. And the same could obviously be said about photography as well. So I don't know how familiar you are with my work, but there's one photo called Icarus. You may have seen.
Hold up. Yes. Can I pull that up before you start talking about this?
Yep.
Because
of course.
Let me just give you my spiel on your Icarus real quick before you blow our minds with it. Because in my opinion,
sure.
I could be wrong here, but Icarus is a masterpiece, and I say that.
Thank you.
And I never say that about people's work, dude. Like when you die, this is gonna be the photo that like is like in the front or the cover of your book, dude. Like this photo is
thank you.
Insane. And like I'm not trying to blow your head up, but dude, like looking at this photo, I'm just like, God damn it. Like anyone watching, if you're in the car right now, stop your car and go to the YouTube video or just go to his Instagram and look at this photo. Dude, please. Okay, keep going. This photo is just like,
thank you.
So good, man.
But yes, so this photo Icarus was a huge production. It was a huge production, probably, and is the biggest thing I've ever done. And this was meant to be the final piece of the series that I was talking about earlier, Utopian Beauty. So I wanted to end this series with a bang. I wanted it to be the best concept, obviously, and with the best photo I've ever taken. Now, obviously, that was a lot of pressure, blah blah blah. So when I was in the initial conceptualization phase and coming up with the idea, I was thinking, okay, what direction should I go, blah blah blah. I had that classical art theme going, but how can I continue it? And then I've always been obsessed with angel wings. I've always been obsessed with wings and like how they look.
Yeah, these wings are enormous, dude. Holy shit. Were those custom made?
So I'll get to that.
Okay.
So I've always been obsessed with angel imagery. And funnily enough, I was watching Batman versus Superman by Zack Snyder. And there's this one painting in that film where Lex Luthor, played by Jesse Eisenberg, was talking about how, angels and demons, blah, blah, blah. And he said that angels fall from the sky. And then it wasn't like, that didn't really inspire me from the get-go, but then that kind of stuck with me. I was like, okay, angel imagery, blah, blah, blah. And I really liked the look of that painting. And obviously, as a kid, we were taught about the story of Icarus, the man who flew too close to the sun. For those of you who don't know the story of Icarus, essentially his father, who was the god of something, I don't know, there are so many Greek gods, he decided to make Icarus, his son, a pair of wings out of wax and feathers. But obviously with wax, you can't fly too close to heat because then they will melt. Icarus was like, hey, yo, fuck you, man. I'm going to fly wherever the fuck I want. And then he flew. He was having fun. And then he flew too close to the sun. His wings got burnt. He fell down to earth and then drowned. So it's a terrible story. And it's a story about, I guess you could say, ignorance or arrogance, however you want to spin it. Now, that story was something I was taught from a very early age. And that was when I kind of decided, like, okay, I'm getting lots of angel imagery in my head. I want to do something about Icarus. So then I went on to Google and I was like, right, give me Icarus, paintings, blah, blah, blah. And there was this amazing painting, very famous painting, arguably the most famous imagery of Icarus ever, a painter called Herbert Draper. And the image itself was called The Lament for Icarus. I don't know. You'll probably put that photo up on YouTube, right? When we talk about it, maybe.
If I had someone helping me and my computer wasn't a total piece of shit, I would pull it up right now. But like,
right.
I can really only pull up photos I have like saved to my desktop without.
Okay, fair. Video. That's cool. But yeah, anyway, there's this beautiful painting, and essentially it was the aftermath of Icarus falling into the sea, and he was kind of like being dragged up by some naiads and druids, and he was dead, but he was very peaceful, and his wings were gigantic. Now that was a very big inspiration for this photo in terms of the composition and in terms of how the wings are in terms of scale, and that was the starting off point. So a part of my process is actually drawing out the concept before I take the photo.
Oh, wow.
So this allows me to kind of create a mock-up, which then I would use to pitch to models, to set designers, to makeup artists, so that everyone knows exactly what I'm seeing. And that's why I kind of, that was like the segue from the last topic about we need people that know your vision. So if I do these sketches, if I do all these drawings, people know exactly what I want from the get-go. So I did the mock-up for Icarus.
That's crucial.
And then I sent it. Crucial, because it helps with composition, and it legit helps with planning the lighting, blah blah blah. It's such an important part, and I highly recommend it to anyone. So I had this idea, I had the drawing, and I sent it to one of my best friends who's a set designer. And I told him, okay, how realistic is this if we wanted to make wings of that scale? He was like, we'll have to see. We'll have to rain check. We'll have to rain check.
They're huge, man. They're huge.
They're huge. They're huge. Their wingspan of like, it's mad.
It's like what, 30 feet, you think, from tip to tip? Longer,
so
right?
I was trying to remember the exact figure, but I actually don't remember how big they were. But actually, I might have some behind the scenes photos of this that I can show you in a bit. But essentially, right. So I told the set designer guy, I was like, right, okay, I want these giant ass wings. Oh, I remember. I think there was no, was it? Okay, never mind. Let's forget about the figure.
Yeah.
He and so I told him I want big ass wings. He was, all right. And then we need lots of people. He's, all right. So I told the set designer, like, right, if you can worry about the wings, I'll worry about everything else. He was like, okay. So a few weeks passed. This photo took 7 months of production. That's how long this photo took. 7 months of planning and production.
I'm pulling this back up.
And it was 7 months. It obviously wasn't like 7 months per day, like 12 hours per day.
Yeah.
But it was 7 months in the planning simply because it was the logistics of the wings, where we were going to shoot it, how the light was going to be, as well as how many people needed to be in the shot to fill up the space, what kind of camera I needed to use, etc., etc. So after a few weeks, the set designer came back and he came up with a plan of how we were going to do these wings. So this set designer, his name is Francesco, and he's a very, very talented individual, and a huge, huge part of my process. So he came up with this idea of like, right, what we're going to do is we're going to do like a metal frame for the wings out of these rubber tubes and tubes that he had left over from previous projects. And then we would use that as basically like a chassis. And then on top of and there was like basically like a grid kind of structure to it. And then once all of that was done, we just buy a shit ton of feathers and then just kind of like, put them in, boom, 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 and layer them and to create that wing kind of effect.
That's ingenious because I'd imagine that making them separately and then having to put them down would be so much more difficult and pain in the ass. But that way of just laying it down and then laying the feathers on top, for the photo and just for that shot, and because you drew like the angle and everything, you can do it.
Yep. And then so once we had everything in place, basically he was able to just put the feathers together. It was me, him, and a few other amazing people that helped out. It took us about, the actual assembly took about maybe a week and a half, but it was mainly the planning that took the longest. So we put all the feathers together and we ordered about 20,000 feathers, 20,000 individual feathers, off of Amazon, off of some Chinese websites. blah blah blah. We had them all sent over, and it was actually quite cheap, to be fair. It wasn't that expensive.
Are they
But
real? Are they real?
no, they weren't real. They were all fake feathers.
I mean, I don't care. I was just curious. I was curious.
Oh yeah, but yeah, they were all fake feathers. Blah blah blah. I think there were a few real ones in there, maybe like some. Yeah, I don't know. But we basically we got the wings together, and once the wings were kind of set in motion simultaneously, that was when I was figuring out, like, all right, how many people do we need, blah blah. So I basically sent out I sent a message to about maybe everyone I knew. Everyone I knew in London. I was like, do you want to be part of this, blah blah blah. But it was all very, very secretive, because at this point none of the series was out, and I was doing all of this in advance prior to the series' launch.
Yeah, dude.
So I
There's
wanted to make sure.
There's 30 people, at least from what I can quickly count. There's like 30 people in this photo.
Holy. There was 39 people on the day. I'm pretty sure.
God, organizing that. Holy shit.
And yeah, exactly. So that took a lot of time as well, obviously, to organize, to send out the emails, the call sheets, the details, and telling everyone not to tell anyone. You're not allowed to take photos. And here's the really cool thing about this day, is that no one in this photo knew what was going to happen or what they were going to go into. What? The only person that knew was the guy that plays Icarus. So he's a personal friend of mine called Earl, EJ. I told him what was happening, but everyone else, no one knew what they were going into. I basically said, I'm doing a concept on this day. There's going to be a shit ton of people come through. That's it. That's all I said. Because I wanted to make it into an experience, right? And the good thing about... Oh, yeah. Well, I hope so, at least. But at this stage, when I was doing this photo, I was already about maybe 3 or 3.5 years into the photography game. So I was able to, create a little following, and like had a few friends and connections within the industry who were willing to help. So all I had to do was say I had a concept, and they were already in and they were already down.
Nice.
So I wasn't too worried about explaining it to them. But I also wanted that genuine emotion on their faces. I wanted it to genuinely be like, what the fuck?
Wait, did you record like a behind the scenes video for this project?
There is a quick time lapse of the people. So yes, there is a behind the scenes video.
Dude,
so I can send that to you if you like.
Well, not right now, but you should have totally had someone there like filming a BTS for this shoot, because I would have loved to see these people's faces when they were like walking in, or like when they were like
that was the plan, to be fair. That was the plan, to have someone filming it, but then it got to a point where it was very hectic and stuff, blah blah. But anywho, so yeah, I basically told everyone nothing and just told them to come through. And the way we set up the studio was essentially, so you walk in through the door, and there were basically just these 2 big black pieces of wallpaper kind of like put up, like Colorama put up. And then you have to walk to the side, and then you'll see like the whole wings. But when you walk in through the door, you don't actually see anything but black, and until you turn left and then turn the corner. So there was that genuine kind of like suspense of like what was actually going to be in the photo. So I told everyone to come through, and then I organized a day where like essentially groups will come in gradually. So it'll be a group of 5 people come in first. I'll place them, and then et cetera, and then I'll place it all and compose the image. So I was taking this photo from an elevated point of view, obviously. So I was about there was probably like a flight of stairs, and I was at the very top. I was looking down, and I saw everything. Then the first group came in, and I was basically like a guy with a loud horn, just like, right, group 1, you're going to there. That person, I like how you look, so you're gonna move over there. You're gonna go behind Icarus. But when they first came in, they were exactly, and but like seeing their faces when they first came in, that was so sick, because I was legit like, yo, they're actually shook. And obviously the story behind this concept itself was essentially, what if Icarus fell to Earth in 2019 at the time? Because obviously we got this classical art depiction of him falling to Earth in ancient Greece. But what if he fell to Earth now? How would we react, or how would people react? And in my head, I was thinking, we'd probably just surround him and take photos of him. if I'm completely honest.
Are you kidding me? That's exactly what we do.
Like,
we're just chimpanzees down here, man. We would all be doing exactly what this photo says, or what it's showing.
Exactly. Sorry. We'll all just go over and be like, "Yo, check this out, guys! Oh my god!" And like,
and the guy holding up the selfie for 50, what is it, quid or pounds or something?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Quid. Here's the thing, like, you know, there's already salespeople coming in profiting off of this guy's demise, and the message I'm trying to say is pretty much that, you know, we are living in a society or a generation where rather than going to help someone out, we'd rather first document / think of ways we could potentially profit from their demise. And it's a very sad reality, but that again coincides with the theme of the series, which was using beautiful imagery to tell the sad story.
Beautiful sadness.
So I wanted people to look at this imagery like, wow, that's beautiful. But then the longer they look, they'll be like, holy shit, this is meant to be, you know, this is meant to be a reflection of how bad we are.
Yeah.
And the original painting is called The Lament. Sorry. The original painting was called The Lament for Icarus. I want people to ask, who are we really lamenting now? Ooh. Is it Icarus or is it us?
Ooh.
And that's the whole point of this series. I wanted to ask that question of like, who should we really be feeling sad for? Now, in this photo, it's, you know, I wanted everyone to obviously feel sad for Icarus, but to feel sad for everyone around him. Now, back to the day, you know, that's when I started bringing in all the people, positioning them and stuff. And if you see the actual raw photo from straight out the camera, it's pretty much exactly the same, except the background. Now, obviously, on the day, it was just all black backdrop. It was all just black backdrop, and everyone was just against black. Now, this is where my art background came in. So I basically got a photo of London skyline, and then I traced it using just like pencil, and then I painted it with watercolors, and then I photo imposed that into the black backdrop that was part of this image. And then using Photoshop, I would add in all the colors in the background, add in the clouds and the smoke, blah, 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 to make it look even more like a classical painting.
Yeah, make it look more cohesive and blend.
Exactly. And then once I had that, that's when I started the editing process of making all the colors uniform, making it look flat. And a huge part of my process, especially for this photo, was making the shadows a little lighter than usual. So it's a little gray rather than full black. And that kind of creates that kind of like flatness across the image, where I'm kind of essentially getting rid of depth, if that makes sense.
But it shows detail when you do that. You can like, you see a little bit more detail when you do stuff like that.
Exactly. Where I wanted it to look like I wanted it to look flat in 2D, but still have depth. Because here you can still see, like, you can obviously see the crowd in the front is meant to be the foreground. Then you've got the middle plane of the wings, and then you've got the people in the back, and then you've got the image, and then you've got the city in the very back.
Yeah.
So there's obviously still that 3D-ness, but it's still done in a way where it looks like a 2-dimensional painting.
Yeah, and that's where and it looks like you lit it from, if you're looking, if I was you taking the photo, it looks like you lit it from like the top left down.
Yep. So we had rather than, because we didn't really have any big lights, so I'm pretty sure on that day we just had 7 strobe flashes, 7 softboxes all on one side.
Holy shit! You took the what is it, the Robert Deakins approach?
Roger Deakins, exactly. We just had a shit ton of lights on one side, and then boom.
Dude, I mean, that commentary of the point you're trying to get across here is, it's so painfully accurate, where it's like, no one's worried about the fact that this poor person, who might be an angel, whatever, has fallen and could be hurt. No one, like in this photo, no one's helping them. Literally, the guy closest to him is taking a selfie with him.
Exactly. I was gonna say, like, if you look at that guy, who's
I'm gonna zoom in if you're watching.
Good friend of mine, Edward.
He's like, what's up?
He's there,
he's like, hey, yo, it's an angel. What's
legit,
up? Yo?
He's like, yo, check me out. Exactly. He's legit like, yo, check me out. Look at this guy.
Yeah,
he did.
Like, but this photo, there's so many other elements. Like you could spend like an hour looking at this photo and just picking out little elements, like the girl behind him, like the girl above him, the guy who's holding a sign pointing at him, like it has that painterly quality where it's not just like most photography where you look at it and you get it. You kind of set it up in a way where you have to spend time and just like digest this photo.
That's what I'm trying to do is with most of my work now, is to have that kind of like deeper allegorical meaning, but also have lots of mini narratives, lots of mini stories. And with the whole process of me drawing out the concept before, it allows me to do lots of that, where like every little thing that you see in most of my big concepts is thought over. Where like the placement of like one red lamp in the background was probably like, you know, thought about. Like I like to make sure that every little thing has a little meaning. So you know, in Icarus we had the guy that was holding the feather, we had the guy like holding up the sign that says selfies, and there's one little blink if you'll miss it kind of detail that I don't think you'll be able to see on the copy of the image that you have because it's very small. But if you zoomed in a lot and a lot and a lot on one of the girls' phones, and she's a beautiful Asian girl called Jay, on one of her phones it actually says in Chinese, stand with Hong Kong. Because as a Hong Kong person, and with all the political, you know, turmoil that's going on in Hong Kong and China, I always try and sneak in that message into every big concept that I do. Stand with Hong Kong, so that solidarity with Hong Kong. So, you know, even in Icarus, even in my biggest piece, I've hidden that message. So yeah, there's lots of little Easter eggs. There's lots of little, you know, nooks and crannies that people can find if they look.
Dang, that's insane. I mean, I wish I could do that, but I literally screenshot it off Instagram, which already poops on any quality photo you put on there.
Yeah.
But oh man, I would love to see that in real life. Like that photo, like this is one of those examples where internet photos don't do real photos justice. Like the photos I saw of you at your exhibition where that thing was like, I don't know, 36 by 46 or some crazy size. Like
it was 40 by 50.
Someone bought that, right?
Huge.
Someone bought that, right? About to say, if someone didn't, they are stupid. If they didn't, I would have given my left testicle that day. I'd have been like, chop it off right here, bro. Like I don't got the money, but I need this photo.
That's good.
But like I need this photo because I know in like 10 years this photo is like gonna be worth like so much more money. But yeah, no,
I will give my left nut.
Yeah, it's my right one.
Good,
that's big.
Man.
My right
that's
one's
good.
the big one, anyways, right? So like you need the left one, right? But like, dude, I just.
Thanks,
I mean,
man. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's important that people realize that like you only get like 20% of a photo when you're looking at it on this flat screen, not when it's like professionally printed and presented, and like that's the importance of like art exhibitions. But yeah, like,
well, if anyone in LA is listening, when the pandemic's all over and stuff, a copy of the image is actually now on show in the Lost Warhols Gallery. So yeah, you can check that out if you're in LA. Hey.
Oh no way, that's super lit.
Yes, sir. Though, I mean, 2020 had lots of plans. I had loads of plans for 2020 where I was gonna.
I think we all did.
Do exhibitions in exactly. I was gonna do an exhibition in New York. I was gonna do another exhibition in LA. But you know, all this crazy stuff happened. But you know, at the end of the day, plans to be remade. So I'm not too, you know, I'm not too sad about it. But yeah.
So
yeah.
So, and this is something that we mentioned we want to talk about, and it's like your strong feelings towards what's going on in China, because I feel like you are way more educated on this subject, and it's something that keeps coming up, and something that just kind of keeps, in my opinion, from where I'm at, it's unjustly swept under the rug, under like everything going on, under COVID, under all the racist reform, which needs to happen. But you know, what's going on in China is really fucking scary. And I don't know if I know the whole story, but please correct me after I say this, but like essentially, Hong Kong, after the 100-year treaty or the 100-year agreement, was given back to the Chinese government, and Hong Kong existed as like a separate entity from China, and it was like capital democracy, as where the rest of China is very much communist. But now that it's going back to the Chinese government, they're trying to influence Hong Kong to be more like the rest of China. And with that comes like all the civil unrest and all the protests and everything going on.
Right. Yeah, I mean that was a pretty good summary. So the main thing is, let's go a little bit more in depth,
please,
because I think that was a very good, quick summary, but it's actually a lot scarier when you go more in depth.
Let's do it.
So, as you said, Hong Kong was given back to China after Britain's rule, and it was kind of like a separate entity, but to a certain extent, where at the end of the day, Hong Kong's government needs to answer to China, where, Hong Kong is led by a chief executive, which is the equivalent of, say, a prime minister here in London. But our chief executive still listens and has to obey to the president of China. So it's kind of like the governor, I guess you could say. Now, Hong Kong has its own separate set of laws and its own separate judiciary system, because that was part of the treaty when it was given back to China. Britain said that if we are to give back Hong Kong, they need to basically have, freedom of speech, freedom of journalism, freedom of press, freedom of religion, all of that usual good stuff, the good stuff we like. But they will also have their own separate set of laws from China, because they've had so much influence from the British Empire and British rule. You can't just have them immediately go to Chinese, like, I don't want to say it, but dictatorship. Like, that you can't have that, like, boom, immediately dictatorship. So that was part of the deal. And China were like, all right, cool, sounds good. So ever since, at first, in the beginning, from what my parents say, at least, it was all right. Things were good, with China's economy booming and its rising power as like a global superpower at the time. Still, obviously, they are the superpower now, but at the time they were still rising, and trade was really good in Hong Kong, thanks to the British. And don't get me wrong, the whole British colonial thing started from a very, very dark past as well. And I'm not trying to say that, British rule was all great and perfect.
But that is kind of random.
A huge war.
Yeah, that is random that Britain controls the most like prominent city in China, which is like that itself is kind of weird.
So the story behind that was essentially, I know we're we're kind of veering off the topic right now, but
yeah, we have.
The story behind that is essentially Britain and China went into war over opium. So this is the Opium Wars back in the day. And essentially, Britain was supplying the Chinese with opium. That was the main thing. And a Chinese government official, who I don't remember his name, unfortunately. It was a really cool name, actually. But he was like, fuck the Brits, fuck opium. And he poured all the opium into the sea. He burnt all the opium.
Whoa.
And then the Brits were like, whoa, you just completely fucked our trade. We're going to war.
Oh, shit.
So Britain and China fought a war, and China got absolutely destroyed. Like, they got wrecked.
Oh, wow.
And the guy in charge of defense of China, he's universally, at least in China and Hong Kong, he is known as being the most incompetent fucker of all time. But basically, he got absolutely destroyed. The Chinese got destroyed, and so they had to come to an agreement of a surrender. So China were like, all right, we'll give you Hong Kong and we'll end the war. And the Brits were like, cool, we'll take Hong Kong, trading port. We'll like it.
So then, Hong Kong then was just a trading port. It wasn't the massive thing that it was now. It was just like a common trading port. Okay. It was
kind of, it was getting there, but it had very humble beginnings. But its position in terms of strategic position, and the fact that it's like at the south of China and then it opens out to the sea and the trading port, it proved to be a very good asset to the British Empire, and China knew that, and Britain knew that. So they were like, all right, we'll take Hong Kong. Then there was actually another war, and China lost again, and then Britain got a little bit more land. But that's how Hong Kong came to be under British rule.
Okay.
Now now let's fast forward.
Go through time here.
Now, exactly. Now Hong Kong has been given back to China, and in the beginning, people were like, "All right, this isn't too bad." There was obviously lots of fear, nonetheless, of is the Chinese Communist rule going to come back? Are we going to suffer? So lots of people actually immigrated from Hong Kong at this point to Canada, to London, et cetera, to America.
At what point are you talking about? Like around what time? Like around what year?
This is around 1997.
And so around 1997,
96,
that's when the British grip on Hong Kong was starting to loosen up and go back to China.
Yep.
Okay.
So 1997 is the year that Britain gave Hong Kong back. And prior to that, there were lots of talk. It was already kind of like lots of fear. So in the early 90s and stuff, people were already immigrating from Hong Kong to the rest of the world.
Okay.
But especially when it actually happened, there was still lots of fear. But then in the first few years, things were all right. Things were pretty good. Culture was booming, money was booming. People were like, all right, this is good. Then 2003 is a very, very seminal moment in Hong Kong history. Now, the reason why I had to make a point about Hong Kong having a separate law system and a separate judiciary system is very important, is because in China, there's heavy censorship about Tiananmen Square massacre. Now, this is just one example, and it's just the easiest example. There's obviously lots of other crazy shit going on.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of you who don't know, in 1989, so this is prior to Hong Kong being given back, in 1989, a bunch of students in China, they wanted the right to vote for their leader. They wanted democracy, and they wanted civil rights, and they wanted human rights. So they went and did a peaceful protest. And key word here is peaceful. Very similar to, everything that's going on right now, which I'm very glad is happening. People came together. They were doing peaceful marches. They went to Tiananmen Square, which is the big city square in Beijing, the capital of China. And they were all just camping there. They were singing songs. They were doing hunger strikes. It was nothing major. They weren't even doing any property damage. They didn't, destroy stuff. They didn't burn shit on fire. They were all just chilling. And it was all students that were like, younger than me. There were students of like 17, 18, 20. All generations were there. And it was a beautiful, few days of people just wanting, a better world for them. June 4th, 1989, the Chinese government sent in the army to, disperse the crowds, disperse the riots that they said that was happening.
And this is in
Tanks
Beijing.
were sent in.
Sorry. This is in Beijing,
this is
not
capital.
Hong Kong. Okay.
Yeah, this is Beijing, capital of China. So tanks were sent in, and live rounds are fired. People were killed. Legit, the army just went in and they just started shooting. The shooting started. Kids half my age were being shot. Boom, boom, boom. And by the morning of June 5th, the square was just bodies. Just bodies. Now, the official number from China is a couple dozen, 70 at max. That these rioters were quelled, and they were just social unrest, and they were just anarchists, when in fact the estimates are at least 70 to 100,000 students were killed that day. Lots went missing.
Whoa. I was not expecting that number.
Yep.
Even if, let's just go low, 70,000. That's a fuck ton of people to kill, of your own people, of young people,
of your own people,
lives ahead
of your own young new generation, the next generation of China. So it was a huge event.
It's
obviously.
A massacre. I mean, that's
it was a massacre. That's why it's called the massacre. And yeah, lots of kids that genuinely just wanted a brighter future for China were killed just like that. And now Ever since that happened, China refuses to even acknowledge or talk about it. It's erased from all Chinese history books. You're not allowed to mention it. It's heavily censored. When you search June 4th in China, nothing comes up. If you talk about June 4th, you're immediately shushed by family members. If you talk about it in public, they have grounds to actually come up to you and arrest you for defamation of the state. So this is why having a separate law system in Hong Kong is so important, because in China, you could be committing treason for simply bringing up something that happened in China's past. Wow. Now, that's just an example. That's just one example. So in China, there's still aversion therapy for homosexuality. There's still shock aversion therapy for homosexuality, yes. People still go missing. People go missing all the time because they're trying to, spill the beans about what's going on in China. And a quick example would be, look at the doctors that were trying to say what was happening in terms of COVID. We had a few big so-called whistleblowers, right? That they were saying, oh, the situation in China is really bad. Boom, silenced. Boom, gone. You've got artists like Ai Weiwei. People like, he was an artist, a very celebrated artist. And he was trying to say and talk about the bad things going on in China. He was put on house arrest. People that knew him, simply knew him, were put on house arrest. His wife.
Sorry, just interject.
Yeah, you were saying. Sorry.
The thing with Ai Weiwei is that him speaking out, he was such a prominent figure that you couldn't just take him away. Otherwise, like I think they were smart enough at that point to realize, if we just take this guy away, we might cause him we don't want. But there's people on the daily, and you can hear about this, and it's on the low, is like they just disappear, like you said, like no questions asked, and they're not famous. So 100%. They're just gone, put in the back of a wagon, never heard of again.
If Ai Weiwei wasn't Ai Weiwei, he'd be dead. He'd be dead.
Yeah,
the only reason he got house arrest was because he was Ai Weiwei.
Yeah, and there's like a recent account of like a journalist who was like drunkenly just like saying light bad things about the government, and the government showed up at his door and they were like interrogating him. Why were you saying these things? Like it's that like under control over, you better not say some bad shit about the Chinese government. Like even a slight, and you may not be here tomorrow. Like that's wild, dude. Like that's a wild society to live in.
Yep. So people often say like, oh, people often talk about like North Korea or like Nazi Germany or communist Russia, and they often forget that this shit is still happening now in China. Anyway, but with all of that that's going on in China, it's very important that Hong Kong didn't have the same thing, it didn't have the same laws. So Britain made sure that was part of the treaty. So back to the original point I was making, 2003 in Hong Kong came, and some politicians and lawmakers in Hong Kong proposed something called Article 23. Now, Article 23 is essentially, it kind of talks about treason and selling of state secrets. Now, I'm going to go a little bit into that. So Article 23 would have basically been introduced into Hong Kong's law, where if you sell state secrets or have sedition or what's the proper term? Okay. An easiest way of saying it is, if you chat shit about China, you get thrown into prison. Essentially, they wanted to introduce that law to Hong Kong. Now, you might be thinking like, okay, you're selling state secrets and being a traitor. That's fair enough. Like, I don't want a traitor in my country. You can get, fair enough. You can get thrown into prison for being a traitor.
But that's not the small text.
That's when the gray area comes. What is defined as a traitor? And if you look at the examples set in China of how you talking about June 4th is already deemed as a traitorous act, and if we had introduced this law, that would be the same thing. And it would allow China to come in to Hong Kong and basically silence anyone. So that's why Article 23 was such a very scary thing, because you're like, wait a minute, whoa, hold on. This was in 2003.
Oh shit.
So the Hong Kong people rose up, and people were like, "Fuck this shit!" And 500,000 people went onto the streets and they marched, and they were like, "We don't want Article 23." I was there. I was young as fuck. My parents were there. My whole family were there. Everyone I knew were on those streets protesting, and it worked. And the government said, "Okay, yep, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. It's all Gucci. It's all Gucci. We
And
move
nothing
on."
bad
Like,
happened. Like they didn't fuck with the crowd or the protesters or nothing.
Yep, nothing bad happened. Nothing bad happened, and now all was good. All was good. So then, from that moment onwards, on the 1st of July, which is the day that Hong Kong, which is China's national day, on the 1st of July, it became a Hong Kong tradition of we go onto the streets and we protest, fighting for the same rights that the students in 1989 in Beijing fought for. So we wanted true democracy, we wanted human rights, we wanted civil rights. Every year on the 1st of July, we would do that march. And you might be thinking, okay, maybe there's a couple thousand people, blah, blah. Every year since 2001, there have been at least 250,000 people. At least 250K people go out onto the streets. I'm pretty sure I went every year.
And is this across the entire country of China, or just in like Beijing, or just
this
in
is just in Hong Kong? This is just in Hong Kong. This was a Hong Kong thing, because in Beijing you're not allowed to.
Oh yeah, you're
in China
right.
You wouldn't be allowed to do any of this shit. So this is what we were fighting so hard for, was the fact that in Hong Kong you can do this without being thrown in prison. So we wanted to fight for ourselves, but we also wanted to fight for the people in China, our brothers and sisters who don't have this right to voice their opinion, to want to say they want democracy. We'll fight for them. We'll do the marching for them. So every year we would do that. And on top of that, every year on the 4th of June, we would have a memorial service for those who gave their lives in Beijing in 1989, where we sit in a park, we sing songs, we hold up candles. So that's a Hong Kong tradition. That's pretty much now known as the Hong Kong spirit. 1st of July, we fight for democracy. 4th of June, we remember our fallen comrades. Hong Kong's identity has always been, we will not take shit, and we'll always fight for justice. We'll fight against tyranny. We'll fight against injustice. That's always been the thing.
Yeah.
Now, finally we're catching up to current events. So about a year ago now, almost exactly a year ago now, lawmakers in Hong Kong once again proposed something very similar to Article 23 that was overturned in 2003.
Oh. And
this time the law was essentially, it was called the extradition law, and extradition law.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds right. And essentially it is criminals in Hong Kong would be able to be extradited to China to be tried.
Ooh.
Now you might be thinking, fair enough, criminals are criminals. And then you think about the exact same thing like in 2003, what's deemed as a criminal is very up to China now, because they can just be like, oh, you chat shit about China in 2006, we're going to extradite you to China where our laws apply, because you guys have your own laws, right? We'll respect that. We'll let you keep your laws. So we're going to set up a new law which allows us to take criminals out of your jurisdiction to our jurisdiction.
What a sneaky thing to do.
Right? So that's the law that they proposed, and Hong Kong was like, fuck this! And then this is when the records were broken. 2.5 million people came out in Hong Kong and marched against this law. 2.5 million peaceful protests.
When was this?
This was 1 year ago today. Pretty much 1 year ago today.
Yeah. Okay.
2.5 million.
Seeing that. I remember seeing a lot of imagery and videos, at least what could get out from China, because we all know that it's the information and the Great Firewall is like a real thing. But like, I remember and it was like lightly covered in our news, which is kind of weird to me. But on the internet, I remember seeing this. I'm like, what is going on?
Yep. Like people were going nuts. Like, because obviously this is a big thing. This is a big law. And if this law were to pass, then Hong Kong basically dies. So 2.5 million people came out, and it was peaceful protests, huge marches. I was there on that day with the 2.5 million. Then I came back to London, And the minute I came back to London, that's when things started going really bad for Hong Kong. So after I left, the protests continued. And at first, there was a semblance of victory because the government said, okay, we're going to shelf that law. We're going to shelf that idea now. We're not going to pass that law anymore. I would allow China to extradite. All right, we've got victory, yes. But now, whilst we're all out here, we're going to continue to fight for democracy. We want true democracy. We want to get these people that even proposed the law in the first place out of office, and we want to choose our own people.
Nice.
And so the marches and the protests continued. And then that's when people started getting a little bit more violent because with these massive crowds always comes anarchy and violence. True. So then more property was getting damaged.
But also to add on to that, like with the parallels of what we see in America right now, is that you can only peacefully protest for so long before you have to really let people know that we mean business. True. Because like how many times have Black people in America or just people for equality and racism peacefully protested that got nowhere? So many times.
Very true.
So people to be surprised that people are rioting and in the side aspect of looting, which is so minor in the grand scheme of things, it's like you have to at some point put your foot down and be like, we're no longer going to be peaceful about the shit. We want this now.
And that's the thing. That's exactly what I was going to acknowledge as well. It's like when you think about it, and this is kind of like something that's unsaid in Hong Kong. When you think about it, we've been marching every year since 2001, 2003. We've been doing this every year. Nothing has changed. Nothing has happened. Yes, we were able to shelve a few of the big, bad laws, which is good, but we still are nowhere near true democracy. We have nowhere near universal suffrage. So this is an anger, like you said, that's been pent up in the Hong Kong populace for years, decades even since the 1989 student massacre in Beijing. This pent-up rage has been in Hong Kong for so long that all it took was a little spark, and then the whole place would legit just be like, yeah, we're going to fight. And the minute there was any looting or any damage of property, that's when the government came up with their, they had an actual excuse to send in police and riot force. And then that's when the police brutality came. Now, police brutality,
and that's when I would see a lot of the videos on Live Leak. I started to cut you off. That's when I see a lot of videos of Live Leak of the protesters. Like, it first started with the police hitting the protesters because from what I saw, there's not as much gun use in China, but a lot of like batons and shit. But then all of a sudden, a week later, you start to see the protesters beat them up back. Like if you even looked like some sort of enforcer, they were just jumping you. And it was framed, and it was framed in a way that made the protesters look really bad.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And the media, especially in the Chinese-controlled media, but I think Western media is also guilty of that as well, is that they always framed it so that the protesters were rioting and the police were just doing their duty. But then when you actually look at the civilian caught footage or the footages of Love Live Leak and YouTube, et cetera, or the independently owned news groups, you can see that it is police brutality. It's overt violence. Because at first, here we go. In the very beginning, yes, it was basically, police using batons, blah, 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 smoke bombs, tear gas. Then the protesters started to adapt. They started they would bring umbrellas, and it became known because umbrellas have been a huge iconography significance in Hong Kong. And it's like we hold umbrellas to deflect tear gas. We hold umbrellas when it's raining. We don't care. We're always there to fight.
Okay.
So there was, we would use umbrellas to catch the tear bombs and then throw them back. We use umbrellas to stab them back, stuff like that. People were fighting back, and then that's when the violence really, really went nuts. Things set on fire, blah, blah, blah. And then the killing started. And here's the thing. People don't really talk about this. And it's obviously all very tightly controlled and censored and very mysterious. But it first started with a kid half my age at the time we was about, okay, not half actually. No, that was like, lol, that's a lie. He was like 15. He was 14, 15. He went onto the street and he was protesting as well. A cop shot him in the chest, point blank, just shot him. And there's
I've
even
heard about
videos.
that a little bit, yeah.
There's videos where the guy was legit just chanting. Cop comes up, shoots him right in the chest, and you're like, whoa. And then that's when the footage started coming out of old people, 60 years old plus, an old lady who was saying, you've been firing tear gas at us, we've taken your tear gas, blah 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 blah, all we want is a voice. And she was just screaming and crying and saying, you're hurting our youth, you're killing our next generation for standing up for something so beautiful, and you're killing them. And this was an old lady, and she was speaking for, you know, her generation and all the future generations. And she was just saying her mind and saying, you're hurting the future of Hong Kong. And guess what? A cop just went up to her and shot her in the face. Not with a live bullet, but with a rubber bullet.
But still,
he just shot her right in the face.
Still,
boom.
You could kill an old lady like that. Holy shit.
Exactly. And then a journalist who was reporting it, she lost an eye because she was shot directly in the eye.
Yeah, because you know you're supposed to bounce them off the ground, right? Like when you shoot a
right, exactly. When you shoot rubber bullets, boom. Nah, they didn't give a shit about that shit. They would shoot you. And then that was when rubber bullets were still being used, but now it seems like live rounds have been fired as well. And yeah, that's the thing. And then we've got lots of like people that would just be arrested just because they were associated with rioters, you know, and it just went really crazy in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has really become nuts.
It's so crazy because, you know, so Hong Kong does have its own separate government from the rest of China's government, right? But it's so obvious. It makes sense to put two and two together to be like, okay, at what point does the Chinese government start to swallow up and take chokehold of this Hong Kong government? And it's like these people out in the streets protesting for all this stuff, for all this change. But essentially, the change they want is they want the lawmakers and the politicians to take their side and to fight back against the actual Chinese government. And like that's you know, that's what they're protesting for, right? Is that change? But it makes you wonder, like, how corrupt is this already? And like, what do they even do? Like, do the people have to literally go into the parliament and like kill them themselves? Like, because that's real revolution, right? Is where even the cops are like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore, because the only thing that's separating the lawmakers from the people is this line of cops, and the cops in their mind are doing their job, protecting their family. But at what point do the cops sit there and go, you know what? I'm with these people. Like, let me help them out. And then you overthrow a government. Because in my mind, I don't know how else you get stuff done. Because I remember I saw a video quite recently where they were in like the Hong Kong government and they were trying to vote on something, and they literally wouldn't let the people come in and sit down to vote on something. I don't know what was going on or the details, but there's a video where they're literally carrying this guy who's pro-democracy out of the court building so they could have an overall.
Oh, that happens all the time. That happens all the time.
That's so nuts. That is so.
That happens all the time, man. And it is really sad. It is really, really sad. And the thing is, like, you know, it has gotten to a point where lots of people in Hong Kong have just been saying, yo, what's the point of fighting? You know, what's the point of doing all this? You guys have been marching for so long now, for decades. And those students 31 years ago in Beijing fought for the exact same thing. Nothing has changed. So why do people still want to fight? And I think that's what's beautiful about Hong Kong, and also what's happening over in America and across the world now, is that it seems like people have finally had enough of this bullshit, and people are finally taking a stand. And obviously with such a huge magnifying glass on everything that's going on in America, you know, there's less kind of media coverage of Hong Kong situation, because Hong Kong situation hasn't even died down. I mean, yes, COVID came, and, you know, it did kind of die down a little bit. But then since COVID kind of eased up, Hong Kong people went back onto the streets immediately. And they were all wearing masks. And so,
look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's a really easy one. I'm just saying it's very ironic that at the height of the protest, COVID all of a sudden is unleashed from China. I'm just saying, like, why is no one putting this shit together? Like, I'm kind of worried
People
someone's
have
looking at
been
me
saying
outside
that.
my window, but like,
No, people have been saying that
like
about. Yep,
it's coming
there
out
are
that
rumors.
it's coming out that it's a man-made virus. And what are the effects of it? It makes you social quarantine, stay inside, and don't interact with anyone.
There are rumors.
That's the perfect ingredient to quell a protest in the most indirect way. Like,
yep.
hello,
Yep.
is no one else putting this
Hello,
together?
indeed.
Like, that is
Nah,
wild.
it's true, man.
What
lots
timing?
And lots
what?
and lots.
What timing?
Right? Exactly. Lots of people in Hong Kong are actually saying that. They're like, yo, come on. But yes, with COVID, when COVID kind of like eased up a little bit, it's still going on now, obviously. But Hong Kong people still went out. They all wore masks. They were all, they all had protective gear. They still went out and they were like, yo, we're not going to let you forget this. And the police brutality has only gotten worse and worse because we've got news of kids going missing, or uni kids going missing. These are people that were known to be part of the protests. They would just go missing
under COVID,
and then people
right?
are like, okay,
they had COVID and they just went missing.
And then here's the thing: their bodies would be found a few days later, washed up, completely naked. And then you're like, what the fuck? And then here's the crazy shit: the police will release a statement, no suspicious circumstances. And you're like, bro, their body washed up after they were missing, completely naked. What the fuck? And that's not even a one-off case. This happened 7 times to 7 people, boys and girls. It's nuts.
Whoa.
So people have completely lost faith in the Hong Kong government and the Hong Kong police, because the thing is, there's just so much footage of the police kind of just abusing their power. And now it's gotten to a point where where gangster and police have become synonymous in Hong Kong. And people have no faith in the police.
And what's even scarier is that the whole Big Brother surveillance system in China. Like, I've seen a couple of videos that show the technology of it, and it's freaking scary.
The facial recognition, of that. They can even just see who you are.
The social
with
currency
the mask on
thing that they got going. Like, if you have like a certain score, you can't even walk into certain buildings. Like, what kind of Black Mirror shit is this? And
right, exactly.
Like, but that technology, is that in Hong Kong, or is that just in like outside of Hong Kong?
Yeah, it's still mainly in China, but that's the thing. Hong Kong is slowly dying. That's the sad thing about this, and that's why and the Hong Kong people are so emotional and so passionate about this, is because the Hong Kong that we've been fighting for so long is slowly gone. It's basically gone.
Eventually, it's just getting slowly, yeah.
And the sad reality is it already is gone, because recently, about 2 weeks ago, the security law was put into place, and basically it means that the laws that we were so scared about talking about fighting against will be put into use very, very soon. So lots of people are living in fear. Lots of people are, they're probably going to leave. My family's still out there, and they still went and fought in the protests. They still went to the memorial service, even though it was banned, even though it became illegal. They still went.
Wow.
So people in Hong Kong don't give up, and that's why I feel that, in light of everything that's going on right now, that's why I'm very proud to see finally people are standing up against racism that's always been there, against police brutality that's always been there. Hong Kong's been fighting this fight as well. Black people have been fighting this fight for generations. I'm just glad that now people are finally being like, yo, enough is enough.
Right? There's like a global mind revolution where people are saying, no, the few do not dictate our minds and tell us how the rest should feel. It's like this global sweeping effect. But on top of that, it's like, I don't want to downplay what's going on here, but what we're dealing with here compared to what China and Hong Kong or what Hong Kong's dealing with, it kind of shadows us a little bit. Like, that seems like a way scarier of a situation than us. At least here, we still feel protected. Like, we're simultaneously still protected by our government and hate our government. It's not like in Hong Kong, where if you outright hate them, you might just disappear. Like, that's not going to happen here.
That's the crazy shit. Yeah, exactly.
And just real quick, there on top of that is that, like, the unique thing about America is the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And that whole amendment is about if a government becomes too powerful, then we the people will bear arms and destroy that government. And it's so crazy to think that in a place like Hong Kong, like that doesn't even exist. Like that is like a non-thought.
So yeah, like, you know, the situation in Hong Kong is nuts right now. It's been going on for years. Well, very strongly for a year, but it has technically been going on for years now. And you know, I'm just glad that people around the world are fighting against tyranny in any way or form. And hopefully, when this whole American situation and the Western situation is kind of calmed down a little bit, and you know, people are more conscious about these things, they'll start to notice that how, you know, bad things are in Hong Kong as well, and we can get a little bit more, you know, coverage as well. Well, I mean, that'd be nice.
It's really interesting that you're using your voice and your pretty large platform to even speak on issues. Like, it's like, you know, even though you're a very talented photographer, it's cool that you use that platform and you sneak it into your photos, like the fall of Icarus and your different kinds of concepts. And, you know, just as that subtle awareness, because it's important. If no one else is talking about it,
yeah, 100%. I think, you know, if you, as like an artist or anyone who's kind of built, you know, a little following or like any platform, I think it is our duty to kind of try and raise awareness or like speak about things that we're passionate about. Now, obviously, there's lots of pros and cons to this. You know, I know it can be annoying when like your favorite, I don't know, musician or artist is an activist and they're like constantly talking about stuff, blah, blah. I know it can be annoying, but at the same time, you know, I feel like it is my responsibility as a Hong Kong citizen, as someone who's so passionate about my home that's dying, to, you know, to talk about this, at least, you know, shed a little light on the whole situation, because it seems like, you know, no one else would. So I feel like I need to.
I mean, you're legit the only person in my mind even bringing light to it. So I think it's cool that you do. You know,
I mean, yeah, I know a few people who do know about it, and I'm glad that, like, what I think the best thing that has come out, or one of the one of the positive things that has come out of the whole situation that's going on right now is the fact that finally conversations are being had every day about racism, tyranny, and police brutality. Finally, this is part of everyone's conversations. And no matter, like, you know, you could say, oh, like, there's obviously lots of pros and cons to all of these causes and lots of fallacies, blah, 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 but at least people are talking about it. That's what I'm proud of. Because I don't want to make it into a competition where, like, oh, more people are talking about Black Lives Matter than Hong Kong. More people talk about Hong Kong than Venezuela. More people talk about Venezuela than in Chile, etc. I don't want to make it a competition. I'm just glad that people are talking about good things, you know? So, yeah.
And that's the beauty of like being an artist, is that we can use our unique universal language of imagery that everyone can relate to, and to show a message, to explain it in a way that's a little different, you know? And that's a power that I don't think most artists even could comment on these classical paintings that you're such a big fan of. It's like, you don't see any activism or anything in there, because I don't think they even could back then.
Well, here's the actual interesting little point.
Ooh.
So there is a painting. Damn, I need to remember who it's by. Okay, it will come to me. But essentially, there was a painting by Rubens. There we go. The painter Rubens, he did a painting because he was the court painter of the King of Spain, but he was also the court painter for the King of France. So he was basically, you know, he was well connected, you know what I'm saying? He did paintings for everyone. Now, France and Spain at the time were on the brink of war. They were going to go to war. I don't know. I'm not sure what time period this is exactly, or what the war was about. So Rubens was commissioned to do a piece for the King of Spain. Now, he didn't want there to be a war. So he did this beautiful, big piece. And it's essentially just, you know, opulence in the foreground. You had like grapes and, you know, beautiful kind of like ornaments, and he had beautiful women and beautiful men. And here's the cool thing. He also did portraits of the children of the King of Spain, and he put them into the front row of his children, kind of like all being very happy, blah, blah, blah. Now, all of that was very beautiful and nice and golden. Wait, one sec. My Mac is about to die.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
All right. You're saying about this painting?
So he did portraits of the king's children and put them into the front of this piece as well. And he had them all framed all very beautifully with very beautiful light. But he also sneaked in some Greek mythological kind of gods in. And you had Athena, and she was there. She had, her beautiful kind of helmet. She had a shield, and she was just there kind of behind all this opulence, all this beauty. And then in the very background, he had a city on fire. And then he had a soldier coming with helmet and sword towards the beautiful scene in the front. And he had Athena using her shield to block that soldier from coming. And that soldier was coming with a vent, like you could see on his face, he was going to kill these people. And then, so when you zoom out and look all the way out, you'll see a beautiful scene in the front and a burning city in the back. And then you had the children of the king in the foreground, part of all these beautiful scenes. Now, everyone in the painting is looking in different directions except one person, one of the children looking directly at the audience. So the painter Rubin, through this one painting, essentially says, this is the beauty of peace. This, and in the back, is war. War is coming for peace. And what would be sacrificed? Your children. The happiness of your children would be lost if you let war come to the city. So through this one piece was such a message. Boom. Rubin averted war with art. Boom. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. That's telling me bad shit.
You're telling me that between Spain and France, do this one? Wow.
Mad. So there we go. So yes, art has always been the political tool. Art can always have an impact. Art can always have a message. Boom.
Dude, that's heavy,
Rubin,
man.
baby.
Yeah. I can't wait to look that one up after this. That's insane. Wow, I had no idea.
At least I think the war was averted. War might have happened a few years later anyway, but the intent was there. The intent was there. And I think that's an amazing story. When I read about it, I was like, what? This is sick.
So I mean, it's like the photo of Tiananmen Square. The photo of Tiananmen Square of the person in front of the tank. That was a world-changing photo too.
Exactly. There we go. So yeah, 100%. Like photos and art has always had that impact. Could always have that message. And I think that is something that I'm trying to embrace as well. Because I feel like we were talking about before, it is my duty and my responsibility and to use my platform to say something. So the whole series between Harsh Reality and Utopian Beauty has, some have political messages and some just have messages about us as humanity. We've got Icarus, about us being, profiteering off of demise. We've got Venus, who's, so vain and vanity and pride. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
And I think you do a good job of it. And it's so funny that it's not even funny, but the parallels of your film background into your photography they go hand in hand. And you definitely have a style. Like your work is becoming more and more film-like and thematic, where you look at a photo and you just think of like this whole situation outside of it, what's going on. And that's like a different level of photography where it becomes more like it tells a story and you're conveying more than just a simple idea of, like looking at your work. Someone could easily be confused by, oh, it's a half naked, beautiful woman. Yeah, that's cool. Like, and that's like one level. That's like the first level, but you have to get past that because you're saying so much more. And on top of that, this is something that when I was thinking about this interview, I was like, I need to tell him this. And I'm going to pull up this photo real quick so I can make this point. And it is something very interesting that I've kind of noticed, like about the sort of evolution of are in the photography medium, and I'm sharing this photo with you because this photo from me, which I know is from like your ethereal series, it starts to start the conversation of photography being pushed past just photography. Like you're doing more here, like you're combining photography with, I think, like your graphic design background or some sort of editing skills, and you're almost creating this new medium or this new sort of art form, which is very like profound to say, but like it is. It's like you're taking this old medium of photography and mixing it with this new digital medium, and you're doing this thing because this photo, it kind of looks like a painting. Like if someone showed me this, I would think that maybe this was a painting. So like,
so yeah, that's what I was trying to say in the beginning, where like I want to try and make my photos look like paintings.
Yeah.
But thank you for that comment, though. Thank you. However, I would have to say I can't take full credit for that.
Of course.
I think.
Wait, why not?
Why
of course? Why not? Take all the credit, bro. Come on, I'm trying to dig up you here.
Hey, let's go, baby. Yeah, redefine.
That's me.
But I think on that note, though, I feel that there is one photographer that for me has truly redefined photography and what it could be. Whoa. And he's a photographer called Tim Walker. Now you might have heard of him.
I love Tim Walker, dude. His editorials are insane.
Exactly. And for me, Tim Walker, there are a few other photographers very much like him. There's a guy called Miles Aldridge, Gregory Crutzen, Guy Bourdon. I would say that these guys, they are the ones that have truly brought photography into the realms of art. I mean, Tim Walker, yes, he's mainly known for his fashion editorials, but it's just, he has the exact same process of he likes to do sketches of his photos before he takes them. That's where I kind of like, I was like, yo, if Tim Walker's doing it as well, surely I must be onto something. And like, Tim Walker, Gregory Crutzen, these guys are storytellers. At the end of the day, what's so great about their work is that, yes, it looks good. Yes, it sells the product if it is an ad or an editorial. But the main thing is it looks like, it is a story. It's a story. And the first photo that really blew my mind of Tim Walker was when I didn't actually know who Tim Walker was.
Wait, can I guess it? Can I guess it before you say it?
Okay. All right, here we go.
It's the photo of the girl in the fish tank.
Ah, good guess. It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. But this was, I think, 2011 or 10, around then. It might be like, give or take a year or so. And it was essentially just an Alexander McQueen editorial. And it was just a girl in a beautiful dress, but she was next to Humpty Dumpty. Humpty fucking Dumpty, like a big egg guy. And as a kid, I was like, why is Humpty Dumpty there? And my mom was like, I don't know, it's just a cool photo, I guess. And I was like, okay. And I started flipping through the editorial page. I think it was in Vogue or something. And I just flipped through, and it was just like a girl in Alexander McQueen dresses on a farm on a beautiful day. And it's just the story of Humpty Dumpty going on around her. And then you see like Humpty Dumpty at first, like jumping around. And then at the end, you just see him cracked. And it's just her in the dress kind of like, and I was like, oh my God, I had an emotional connection to Humpty Dumpty. I just wanted to see how he was doing. And he was posing with like a hot girl. I didn't know he was going to die. So at the end, I was like, oh no. And then that was when I was like, yo, this guy just made me emotionally connect to Humpty Dumpty when he was selling dresses for Alexander McQueen. And I was like, yo, this guy just told me a story through photos. And it blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God, photography can be so much more than just a photo. And that stuck with me. And then when, so now when we're talking about photographers that have truly redefined, I mean, thank you for even like mentioning me, but I think, I need to give credit to the true people that have inspired me and have been truly redefining. And that is Tim Walker, Miles Aldridge, Guy Bourdon, and without these people, you know, we wouldn't see this new age of Nadia Lee. We wouldn't see, you know, David LaChapelle, blah blah blah. Without them, without Tim Walker, I know, you know, some of them have like similar time frames, but for me, they are the ones that truly redefine photography.
Well, and I'm probably going to butcher this quote, and I kind of forget who said it, but it goes, "I've only seen further by standing on the shoulders of giants."
Ooh, that's a nice quote. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, I think it was Franklin who said that, and I always get the most insane visual whenever I think of that, and it's such a way to homage people like these great photographers who have given the way, but here 100%. You are on the shoulders, just looking out and doing something new because they gave you that perspective. The same way it's like like it's so funny because my first encounter with Tim Walker was that Fish series. It was an old
beautiful.
It was an old W editorial that my friend just had in a pile of magazines just for an aesthetic. And I was looking at the old editorials and I saw this and I was like, I had never seen something like this. I was like,
right?
What the fuck is this dude on? Like, it was a fashion editorial for these beautiful dresses, but he created this whole world where it was about this fish girl being trapped in a cage and then eventually like dying when she was like kept like brought out of her cage, like in Release of Beauty. And I was just like, this is so next level. And the thing about Tim Walker is that he's very anonymous. Like, you can't find shit about Tim Walker. I've tried. Like, he doesn't have an Instagram. He doesn't have a website. Like, he only exists in magazines, which is so insane to me. He's a ghost.
He's a badass. He is a motherfucking badass.
Dude,
he had an exhibition here in London
a
couple months ago. It was fucking great.
Oh my.
Yeah, no, he was amazing.
Dude,
it was amazing. Right before COVID, it was amazing.
I kid you not. It is my goal with this podcast to have people like Tim Walker on. Like, I hope one day, I'm so serious. I hope one day I can have people like him on, like people like Miles Aldridge.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Dude, that'd be dope.
Oh my God. Like,
soon come, man. Soon come. It will happen.
Soon come. I like that.
100%.
Soon come. I'm going to steal that shit and bring that over to America.
Soon come.
Let's
go. Yeah, we say that a lot here.
Well, Sebastian, man, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Where we just did 2 hours and it flew by, man.
Oh damn! I didn't actually realize.
I think we did longer because we started a little earlier.
Yeah, we did actually. Damn.
But dude, man, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, man, dude. Like, it's really cool.
Hey, no worries. Thank you for listening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to to just chat about my work and also Hong Kong. It means a lot. Thank you. And thank you for the faith that you've shown, like the support you've been saying. I'm like, oh, me.
So I mean, hey, you got to give credit to people when it's due. You got to give credit to people while they're still alive, because like that's one of my favorite things, or one of the things I hate about rap and music is that people don't care about them until they're gone. And then it's like, not that you're gonna die or anything. That sounds kind of fucked up, but like, it's okay. It's okay. No. Like, it's okay to tell someone, yo, you're doing awesome shit. So I'll be that person. But but Sebastian, if someone wants to like connect with you, I know you have like an interesting like little Discord group and stuff like that. How should someone like connect with you and reach out with you and stuff like that?
So on Instagram, I am at Seb_Xavier, Xavier, as in Charles Xavier from X-Men. So that's my handle on Instagram. And I also have a Discord. Yes, I do. We've called ourselves the X-Force because, again, going in with that whole X-Men vibe. And the link to that would also be in my Instagram bio. And yeah, those are the best ways to reach me, and you can see my work. Oh, I've also got a website, sebxavier.com. That's probably the best way of finding my work in HD.
Yeah, and I'm just going to interject this, is that I would highly recommend, if you guys like his work and want to learn more, like the Discord would definitely be the move, because it seems like Discord's awesome. It's like a direct connection with an artist or with a community of like-minded people. And I think that people using Discord now, even though it existed in like the gamer ethos for a very long time, I think artists and the people using it as like a private community is so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah, man, 100%. I've always wanted to connect to my community a lot. And yeah, on the Discord, we actually talk about, behind the scenes. We talk about how I took this photo. I do like little tutorials here and there, or even like review other photographers' work when they submit it. So yeah, it's a very nice little family going on. So be sure to check us out. X Force. Let's go.
X Force.
X Force.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for this one. That's it. That's the angle. Peace out.
Hey, thanks, guys. Woo woo.